Why don't you kick us off, man? Hit us with a little bit of your background. I know you've been all over the place and done a lot of things, and maybe kind of talk through some of the background on what you're up to now. That'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm, pretty much, career payments guy. Probably 3 decades now in payments and, started off in the early days just, what I call pay in, but payment processing and merchant acquiring and kind of spent my time in corporate America and then focused in on, innovation and, how do you go out and really help change, the payment ecosystem and, to where it's better, faster, more secure and how you can help monetize it. And so spent time in mobile technology, around mobile wallets and pioneered one of the early mobile banking companies and
Was that
prepaid.
Firethorn?
Yeah, Firethorn.
So I know I used to hear back in the early Malazai days, Rob Gaynor used to talk about Firethorn and all that. So yeah, man, that's like one of those really cool stories for any the mobile nerds out there, man. You guys are awesome. Way to go.
Yeah, that was, I don't know how many days I spent in Washington D.C. with the regulators telling me you'll never do, financial transactions over a mobile phone, and we ended up pulling it together and stitching the networks and the banks together, which you guys know how hard that is. And
You
then
bet.
and it just, it's one of those great things. It changed people's lives, for the better. And then, mobile wallet, you know, we were fortunate enough to build a company that supported Google and the Google Wallet and Dunkin' Donuts and their app and Vodafone and their mobile wallet over in Europe. And I did that in partnership with SKCNC out of Seoul, Korea.
Hmm.
And so I've been pretty fortunate, very blessed, in the opportunities and, being able to stitch this thing together. But that's my background is really, you know, big, money movement, payment processing, then innovation. And back in the days of payment processing, the innovation was, PIN debit. And you guys remember that.
Yeah, man.
We
Yeah,
called it.
you
Cool.
can get your family picture on the card. That's huge innovation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
I love it, man. That's really cool. Tell me where you think things are heading right now. It's such a wild time, man. We were before you hopped on, we were talking about stablecoin and like multi-purse ledgers. I mean, it is a wild time out there and watching everything from the merchant side with the stripes and the squares and everything else. I mean, it's like everybody's heading in different directions. And I know
Yeah.
somewhere all this comes back to center, but it's a really weird time to watch everybody just scattering, you know?
Yeah, it really is, right? You watch, you saw the recent announcement of, global payments and TSYS and
Yeah.
FIS, right? And that whole thing. And you're watching two big, major players go back to their cores, right? So global payments looking at
That's
it.
exactly it.
Yeah,
I don't think everybody caught that. That
right.
man, everybody just went back to their side of the fence, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so all this innovation and over the last, 20 years and kind of people breaking apart from what their core was. And now we see that announcement and it's kind of like the big guys are going, I'm going back in my corner and I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah.
control, my part of the ground and take care of that. And so I think the big players are kind of retracting back, I guess. I won't say on innovation, but they're retracting back to their core and they're going to invest in innovation in those cores, whether it's core banking or merchant processing or, innovation in technology like we're building at Payouts Network. They're gonna do that. And then you've got the neo banks and you've got all the software companies trying to monetize payments, the payments companies trying to buy software companies so they can monetize payments. And so it's still a little bit of the Wild West, when it comes to that and who's going to win and, what's the play on wallets. But, what we do know is, you know, for us as consumers, we want to be able to self-serve, right? We want our money when we want it. We want to fight fraud as best we can and protect our personal data. And we don't want to give our data to people we don't know. And we want to limit, where that data goes and what people do with it. And I think that, we want to do that. And we, as consumers, we want reliability, right? And we want to be able to transact when we want, how we want, and to where. And we'll see what, happens with crypto and how that plays in and, what, the big networks do. And watching PayPal and Visa and MasterCard and, Discover getting acquired by Cap One. And, so there's a lot of poker chips on the table, I guess.
You
A
got that
lot of
right.
moving parts. Yeah, and a
Yeah.
lot.
There's a world. I think what Tanner said is perfect. Is that like everybody's going in all these different directions, and if you're old enough, you kind of look back at this and it's like, buy now, pay later is a little bit like layaway, and everybody issuing their own debit card to get 5% off your groceries or whatever the hell it is. That's a little bit like it used to be, where my mom had, Pennies and Dillards and Sears and every credit, Gulf and Texaco and all that stuff. And then everybody just went to their debit card or their Visa card, right? Or MasterCard.
Yeah.
It was either credit or working, straight out of their debit account. And somebody just left the barn door open one day and everybody went in 100 different directions. And that question he had is great, because where the hell does this settle down at? I don't know yet, but I mean, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Well, in real time,
What was that, Tanner?
I was just saying in real time is like, I don't know, it's like this whole other facet of things that, I mean, up until now, I think, I don't want to say overblown, but I'm in the camp of thinking that would have had a way bigger impact than it has. And I just don't know that the infrastructure has caught up yet. I still think it's a massive thing, just not moving as quickly as I'd expected.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Mobile wallets are a great example, right? And, mobile wallets have been around forever, and maybe the beginning of mobile banking was the beginning of the wallets. But, functionality and value, to us is really just not having to have your card, right? Waving and paying with your phone. But you go to some place like Seoul, Korea, and SKCNC's figured out how to drive real content in there that impacts people's lives. So there's so much greenfield, but there's so much time and money's been invested in that technology that, I think the challenge for all of us, and, especially those of us who can remember the days of, having a Visa merchant or a MasterCard merchant, you didn't have dual acceptance, right? You're either a Visa merchant or
That's right.
MasterCard. For us, it's getting back to, what's really going to make a difference, and what, how, one, as a business, how do you make money? Two, how do you improve the customer, right? And then at the end, how's the consumer benefit? Because it's pretty easy ecosystem in payments, right? It hadn't changed for years and years and years, right? But we got all these kind of players trying to monetize it, and I think it's getting back to the basics, continue to innovate, off of that. But, you look at, kind of bouncing around here a little bit, but you look at PayPal, right? And you think about the days and how PayPal got into the market and leaving the barn door open. Visa, MasterCard, left that wide open, and they came in, they did a great job. And so I think that's kind of where we are today. I think there's still the barn door open, and there's going to be innovative technology that comes in and, betters people's lives and improves the ecosystem and gets rid of waste and, protects the brand, right?
Let me
Because
ask you something. So I've kind of got my own theory on this crazy shit. It's like if somebody said, we're going to get rid of the insurance business, I'm like, man, you're going to lose a lot of jobs. There's a whole subcategory of businesses that work off of that, right? And when you have that conversation about, let's get rid of interchange, it's like, be careful what you ask for. There is a huge amount of business that makes business off of that in one way or another. And the idea that, well, it's going to save the consumer money or it's going to change everything, like this money actually comes back to our pocket. Do you believe that?
no, I think if interchange was to go away, the fee structure is just going to change, right? It's still going to be basis points, and we're just going to call it something else. And I think that as the regulators, want to sit there and say interchange has got to be controlled and it needs to go away. I think that's just for me propaganda, right? It's just a platform for everybody to kind of rally around, but I don't think that helps the consumer at all, right? I mean, you need the networks, right? You need ubiquity, you need consistency, you need security, right? You need real-time data. And where are you going to get that, right? Are the three of us going to go build another network and invest hundreds and hundreds of millions or maybe $1 billion to go build this network? No, we're going to go ride the rails that are out there. And the rails that are, Visa, MasterCard are great rails, right?
Well, and even with that size and scale, as good as it is, and to your point, I think about the data side of that, right? Like, Visa's got VDM, Visa Data Manager. I mean, it is just incredible how much information is in there, and all the third parties plugging in there, all from Falcon to 100 others playing this fraud analytics and transaction monitoring, and we get our butts kicked.
I was just saying, we still suck at
Right?
it,
And it's
right?
like, okay, let's get rid of interchange. I'm like, let's just take fraud to 100%. I mean, this is crazy, right? We're
Yeah.
we're just getting beat up, even with the dollars that are there to work these problems. It's difficult.
Yeah, the fraudsters are super smart, right? And the data, to your point, Tanner, there's so much data in the networks. The opportunity is how do you utilize that, right? How do you get that data and make a difference, right? How do you reduce fraud? How do you reduce waste? How do you give better transparency to the payor and the payee, right? All kinds of simple stuff, but hard to do, right? I mean, there's a ton of data, but how do you get it out of there and really extract it? And there's lessons to be learned, back from the early days of banking and going from community banks to national banks. And you guys know this better than I do, but the lag in data, between when all the bank mergers went on, and thank goodness we didn't have mobile banking because it would have crashed because the data wasn't the same, right? They're running on 10 different platforms trying to figure out how to convert them all and consolidate them all. No small task, but 20 years later, we're finally to the point where, you can see your balance, you can transfer money real time, right? You've got fraud alerts, but it's taken a long time because of the disparity between platforms.
Well, he and I were talking about it earlier. We were having a discussion with some folks about open banking, and I'm like, somebody says open banking, and what I hear is a real-time digital banking conversion. Bullshit, right? I've done zillions of them. Good luck, it's just it's a bigger problem than most people see. And I think, I was thinking about some of those early mobile days too, and things like P2P. And I remember I was the kid in the room one time, and I made the point of, why don't we just plug in Venmo? They've got their own thing going on. Just plug it in, all the users do what they want to do. And fast forward 15 years, and instead we pay 75 cents a transaction for Zelle
Right.
to the big guys. This worked out great, right? So, yeah, their isolation mentality just ends up blowing us up a lot of times. But hey, I want to hear you talk about the payout side of the world and some of the things you guys are working on now.
Yeah, Tanner, it's a great lead in because when I started this company, it was so my career had really been on the pay in side, right? And then mobile banking and prepaid and all of that. And when I looked at the market, trying to figure out what I was going to do next, it was, the B2C payment space had really gone unattended. And there's this huge gap where Venmo had come in and trained each of us so we could transfer money, between the two of us, in seconds. But if we tried to do it through our companies, it would be days or a week, and we'd have to exchange financial information. But Venmo figured out how you and I can do it real time, right? The three of us could sit there and split a check, or we could pay a bet off the golf course or something like that, and do it in seconds. And Dave puts it in his Bank of America account. Tanner, you put it in your Chime account, and I go and get cash out and stick it under my mattress, right? But we don't care what the three of us did with it, right? We just got it and we took care of it how we wanted. So when I started this, was really how do we build a platform that enables businesses and really enterprise to pay out to consumers, employees, and suppliers in real time. And so what I was really founded on was, one, I wasn't going to go issue a new card. Two, I wasn't going to go build a network. But three, I was going to build a kick-ass platform, right, that managed data and allowed this to happen. And a subset of that is I was going to protect the brand of the payor, right? And so today, I look at Payouts Network, and we're focused on being the global leader in cashless disbursements. And so what that means is we don't want to deal with cash, and we want to electronify everything we can. We want to move it in real time, and we want the end result to be a better experience for the recipient, better data for the payor, and we want to reduce waste, right? That is caused by disparate systems. It's caused by legacy payment methods, right? And it's in fraud, right? So how do we do those three things? And that's what we're doing today, and we're fortunate enough to be doing it at scale. But what that comes down to is kind of simple terms, and is when a company pays out, you just think about this for yourself. you're either going to pay out to where it's a cash equivalent. I owe somebody $100 or I owe somebody $2,000, right? And I don't care what they do with it. It's essentially the equivalent of cash. Here's $100, do what you want with it. And then the second part is controlled spend. And those are kind of the two payments a business makes. And when you're paying out a consumer, you either need to give them cash. So it could be commissions, could be a bonus, could be an incentive, could be a reward, could be service recovery. And airline, I lost your bags, right? And I owe you $1,500 to replace your bag. But then you've got controlled spend. And this is where, businesses are using gift cards or they're using, checks or whatever, but they want to control when I give Dave $100 that it's only good at a restaurant. It's not good for, clothing, right? Or, I want to be able to give them compensation for a hotel, but I don't want them to go buy a new TV with it, right? Or pay off a credit card bill or whatever, right? And so that's what we do is really when we work with our clients, and like Alaska Airlines as an example, is if you're paying out that traveler, is it a service recovery issue? Yes, it is. Is it need to be controlled spend or is it a cash equivalent? And so they would sit there and say, it's a flight delay and I need to give them $15 for a meal. And so we're going to issue them out a payment that has controlled spend around it that limits only good at a restaurant, only good in this airport, and only good for today. But then they may turn around and say, flight's been canceled. We're going to get you out tomorrow. Now we need to issue you a hotel voucher, right? So now I'm going to give you $300 and it's only good at a hotel that's within, say, a mile of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta, right? And it's only good for the next 24 hours. Well, legacy payment methods, they essentially issue out a paper voucher or they issue out an electronic digital credit or digital voucher. And it's basically a virtual card. And so these people walk out of the airport, they don't use it. They go home, they spend it, at the grocery store, or they spend it at the restaurant, they spend it, but that wasn't what the money was intended for from the airline, right? Is to get you through to the next flight. Well, when we solve that problem, we're delivering back millions of dollars in savings to these airlines, right? Because the money is it's really financial rigor around it, right? And so we're getting rid of that waste and we're getting rid of the gamification. But also what happens is the customer experience goes up. You turn a bad situation into a good situation or a better situation. Loyalty goes up. They've got data now to know who paid it out of their company, who'd they pay it to, why did they pay it, how long was it good for? Did it get fully spent? Did it get partially spent? Did it get claimed or did it go unclaimed, right? And so they're able to use that data and we're able to use that data to make the next payment even smarter. Mm-hmm. So, and we're doing all this across the Visa MasterCard rails. So we see every card issued Visa MasterCard around the world, right? We see every merchant in the United States that accepts Visa MasterCard payments, transactions. And so that gives a lot of flexibility, a lot of control to these big enterprises to drive better customer experience, increase loyalty, operational efficiency, and reduce waste, overall cost. And so, prepaid, as we know, is a huge problem when it comes to a sheetment. And so we address a sheetment. So if we find a client that's using gift cards today, let us in because we're going to save you money. We're going to bypass a sheetment. We're going to get your capital back to you, immediately, and you can redeploy it. So that's, Tanner, that's what we're all about, right? And protecting the brand. I didn't really even touch on that. We have clients today that will use, as an example, PayPal. And so they come in and they issue you a payment, but you got to claim it on PayPal. Well, if I'm Alaska Airlines, as an example, I worked so hard to get my brand in front of you. Why am I going to get disintermediated or allow myself to be disintermediated? So part of our other soft value prop is that we protect the brand. And we do that selfishly because Payouts Network is not a consumer brand, right? We want the brands that are our clients to be the brand because the consumer, the employee, the supplier trusts them. I don't need them to spend time trying to figure out who I am. I want them to stay focused on, the client that we have. and who they're
Right.
dealing.
Yeah, I've had all kinds of fun things with PayPal where they decide to put a hold on things where I'm trying to help somebody. And it's like, you just made it worse.
Yeah,
So these things happen. But yeah, being able to have a company in control of how they want to, use card controls in an effective way to make sure, again, we're not wasting money. It doesn't reward anybody to give them something a week later at a grocery store that you've lost the immediacy of the compensation you were giving in the first place.
that's
So,
right. And and the average customer is not looking to game the system, right? They just want to get through whatever the situation is. You can turn this around, Dave, too, and look at, we don't deal in this part of the industry yet, but if you took the tire manufacturers, right, and they sit there and say, hey, buy a sets of tire, four tires, buy a set of tires, and we're going to give you $250 prepaid Visa card. Well, you're going to go buy those tires. You're going to fill out the paperwork. You're going to mail it in, and you're probably going to call 2 or 3 times to see where your gift card is. And it's going to show up in the mail, 3 weeks later.
yep.
They don't know if you've received it or not, right? Breakpoint number one. They put it in the mail. That's all they know, right? And for all they know is I went to your mailbox, opened up your mailbox, took your mail, and I got your gift card, right? You call up and say, I didn't get my card. They issue out another one, right? The same process goes through again and again, right? And then they don't know where those dollars are being spent, right? And so personalization, right? You may want to use that $250 to go buy a saddle, right? Tanner sits there and says, I'm going to go, buy a new fly rod, right? And I may sit there and say, I'm going to go buy, new clothes, right? But they have no idea. But once they get that data and they can start understanding what their customer is doing with that money, they can make it more personalized. Instead of just $250, here's a instant payment via Payouts Network and our product called Digital Credit. And we know that Dave, you're into saddles, right? So we make it, a saddle digital credit, right? Or equine digital credit, right? And for
Did you embed this into their app?
so when I built this, we built the technology to append it to a current card. So when you receive it, you get an email or a text that says you've been paid, Dave, by, pick whatever company, right? We'll just use Alaska again. And this is a reward for being a great traveler, right? So here's $250, enter your credit or debit card. So you got the text, goes through, we got a webhook in there in a web widget, pops in, looks like Alaska Airlines. It is Alaska. You enter your card data, your PIN. We attach it to that card, and now you go shop and spend how you normally do. When we see you shop and spend at a qualified merchant, so we would gate this around equine, right? So we would see that you transacted at, Boots and Saddles in Dallas, Texas. We would see that you swiped your card, you spent $500. We know you have $250 pending credit. We say, hey, Dave, congratulations. You just spent $500 and you just redeemed your $250 credit. So you'll see that purchase of $500, and then you'll see a credit come in right below it, $250, all without an app. Now, if a client wants to embed it into the app because you have it, that's great. We'll put it in the app. But it's a pending credit is what it is, attached to your current credit or debit card. You just pay as you normally do. Don't have to have point of sale integration. I don't have to educate the merchant, right? You can't forget it. It can't be lost. It can't be stolen. All of our platform and data is secure at the highest levels within Visa, MasterCard. So we meet all the requirements. Bank regulation, money transmission laws, we meet all those requirements. But for you as a consumer, you literally get it, spend, we see it, we push a credit, right? And it runs off the Visa MasterCard rails. And so we're the only ones when we built this, it's exclusive to us. We built it ourselves, and Visa MasterCard were allowed us to put the connections in to get the data to make it happen. And so we compete with the gift cards, right? Paper vouchers. And you just think about the waste that occurs and the friction. And, today we issue these out. Airlines is a big business for us, right? We've got a lot of airlines. When you look at that business, 99% acceptance activation. Like people will say, people aren't going to give you your credit or debit card. 99% do, right? And the 1% that don't are underbanked.
I love it.
Good call.
And we've got a solution to get, compensation to them in that situation, right? So they aren't left out. But
To make sure I'm following you, it's depending on whatever the acquirer was given, whether it's a debit or credit or whatever it is, they attach the rebate to that mechanism.
yeah, you choose, right? So I'm going to pay you, right? So I'm going to give you a $250 digital credit. You're gonna receive it, and it's going to say, "Hey, Dave, enter your credit or debit card. Doesn't matter to us. Visa,
Gotcha. Okay, I got it.
you pick what's in your wallet or is in your Apple wallet, right? It doesn't have to be in your physical wallet, but you pick whatever card you have. And you think about this, you have a bank issued financial instrument, OFAC, right? We know you are a good person, right? In good standing in the payment ecosystem. Check number one. Check number two is you're now going to ride the rails that operate every day and attach to that transaction and how you normally purchase. There's no friction there, right? The merchant doesn't even know you have it, right? You swipe your card, you or dip your chip, whatever you're going to do, and we see it, score it. We built a very sophisticated rule system so we can create these rules as to what that money is supposed to do. And then we execute based on, seeing that authorization come in. We execute those rules, score it, and if it qualifies, we push you the credit. If it doesn't qualify, we don't push the credit.
Perfect.
And the payor, right, has this full transparency of whether it's been used, partially used, or not. Another thing that we're doing along this same lines is with FIS, right? So we power their scorecard rewards program, and it's text to redeem, right? So you think about loyalty points, and all of us have, loyalty points all over the place. But what FIS has done in partnership with us is to come in and sit there and say, you're a card holder, and 5 million, 6 million card holders out there today that can use this, that you go in and swipe your card through our connection and partnership with FIS. We see, look at how many points you have, and then we message to you and say, hey, Tanner, congratulations, you just spent $500 at Best Buy. We see you got 5,000 points or 50,000 points, better 50,000 points. Do you want to redeem 5,000 points for $250 towards that purchase? Tanner says, yep. Text back yes to us. We decrement the point balance. We grab $250 and we push it to his card right behind that Best Buy purchase. Dave, you're a card holder as well on the same program. You go into the local electronic store or tax store or whatever, but local merchant, not national merchant, local merchant. And so single store location in Texas, you go in and transact, same thing happens, right? So for us, we built the technology to go hyper local or national or online, right? So now instead of having point of sale integration, instead of and not have it, so you don't have to have point of sale integration. Merchant doesn't have to be involved. This is between you and the issuer. And it's really designed to give these issuers the ability to reach, one, create a better customer experience for their cardholder, right? Let me use my points as if they were cash. And you see some LinkedIn posts from me on LinkedIn about this, but turning those loyalty points into cash real time at your choice. And it's between you and the issuer. It's not between you, the issuer, and the merchant, right? Take a player out of the mix. And now you're able to go and transact. I, as the issuer, can decide where I want to let you redeem to give you the best experience, because we're all fighting to get to top of wallet, right?
Exactly. I love it.
So same technology is what we're doing on the digital credit, right? And then we take that same platform and we're doing all these great, neat things, but then we got the client that says, I just need to give them $100. Great, we'll do that. And so we get you $100, enter your debit card, in 3 seconds, it's in your account. It's guaranteed funds. You can go spend it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's our Venmo-like experience.
Right.
That's cool, man. Really clever, really well thought out. I was thinking about a number of times in companies, and either, folks you invest in or have a board seat or something, and coming at some of the kind of fractional, breaking apart a transaction like you're talking about, but coming from the other way, like you were talking about, And times I've done that, and it's just as you're talking, just light bulbs going off, man. You're a few steps ahead of me. That was really, really smart. I tell people all the time, Keith, it's the hardest thing to explain to everybody. I mean, everybody watching this now that they've heard you say it, and it makes sense. They're like, wow, cool. Do you know how hard it was to be the first person to dream that crazy shit up? Right?
Man,
Hats off to you, man. That is difficult to dream up something that changes the world. It really,
yeah,
really.
man, I pound the table with people all the time of stop trying to think of everything. I guarantee you, a businessman, they'll think of shit you never dreamed of. Just it's putting the parts and pieces in place that allow this flexibility, which is the early part of our whole conversation, is that, you know, we've got these, like you said, going everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Let's see where this goes. Let it go, man. Let people go and be innovative, and you're going to be surprised with the things they come up with. You know, it's always be something where you're like, damn, you know, water on the windshield wiper. Got it. Dang it, I should have thought of that, right? But they'll come up with the clever things that are good for them. And then some of these things catch on like wildfire. But the innovation of business in the United States is unsurpassed. There's nothing like it in the world. We come up with shit. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But allowing people to do these things in a way that's best for them, brilliant. Hats off to you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And I think, you know, for those people listening, driving innovation's hard, right? And you got to figure out how everybody benefits that has a stake in this. And that's the, you know, when you try to, in payments, you're trying to balance the networks, the banking ecosystem, consumer expectations, the regulators.
Yep.
And so trying to figure out how to do that's hard, right? Really hard. And but there's, you know,
And then try to make money at the end of all that. Holy shit, right? You got top line expenses, we got net interchange. It's like who goes where and how do we make any money, right? So yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah. And
Keith, I want to give you a second, man, for final thoughts, man. This has been awesome, by the way. Like really walking through all the parts and pieces and everything. But I want to give you an extra minute, man. Any final thoughts you got?
Yeah, I think that what you guys are doing is phenomenal, right? Drawing attention, you know, to this and the innovation. And I think for us, you know, people listening to this is that, you know, being able to operate inside the current ecosystem, you know, is super important. How do you make it better? We don't need to go create a new ecosystem, for us at least, right? How do you use the current one? And data is the game, right? It really is, you know, data is the game. And how do you figure it out? And trying to not overcomplicate it. And I think that's the other part, right? Is just the regulators, you know, we need them, but we also need them kind of stay in their camp, right? And where they belong. But you know, this is a great country to drive innovation. Payouts Network, you know, we're purely focused on, you know, B2C payments, you know, global cashless disbursements and doing things in real time. And it sounds simple, but it's not. And, you know, we're super fortunate, but, you know, we love this business and we appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Great story. Love hearing everything you guys are up to. And I mean, all your backstory too. I think, you know, watching folks like you that have just done it again and again, and you can't help but get the feeling that you want to be a helper and you're interested in doing cool things and you're capable, man. So hats off to you for doing it again. Keep up the good work.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.
All right,
Take care, buddy.